everyone, and welcome to the fourth episode of Great Conversations. Today, we have a super interesting topic, one that might possibly be on the mind of a lot of agencies and freelancers out there listening today. Should we switch to full site editing? And if yes, when is the best time to do so? And how the hell are we supposed to do that while keeping our regular agency business running? I'm super happy that I have a guest here today who has faced exactly these questions last year. Welcome with me, Rosanne van Staalduinen, owner and co-founder of the Dutch digital agency Buro Staal. Rosanne, welcome to Great Conversations.
Thank you.
I'm super happy to have you here and to hear firsthand from your experiences. But before we dive into today's topic, maybe introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do, what your agency does, what kind of projects and services you offer, how big your team is, anything you'd like to share with us about you and your agency.
Thanks. Yeah, as you mentioned, I'm the co-founder of Buro Staal. We are a small WordPress agency in the Netherlands, and our team consists of 6 people. We build, maintain, and optimize WordPress websites and WooCommerce web shops. And our clients vary from self-employed to small and medium-sized enterprises. Sometimes we build a smaller website with like 10 pages, a blog, and a few additional functionalities. And other times we're building a web shop, including a link to accounting systems, postcode checkers, VAT verifications, whatever. The projects vary enormously, but that's also something that we really like, to just do something else every day. So I think that a third of our the time that we spend is creating like new projects, and the rest of the time we are maintaining and optimizing existing websites. So, yeah.
Sounds great. Thank you. So the reason we are talking today is that last year in early 2024, you switched from a page builder to full site editing, and you kind of did that overnight. You also gave a very inspiring talk about this move and how it went for you guys at WordCamp Netherlands recently. So I'm super excited to hear from you firsthand why you made that decision, how you approached that switch, and above all, how it went for you guys, and if you would do it again, and what your recommendations are for our listeners. So maybe let's start by talking about what was before. Could you please describe how your tech stack looked like before switching to full site editing in early 2024?
Yes, we use the Hello theme together with the Elementor page builder. The Hello theme is basically an empty theme. And with Elementor, we could create the header, the footers, the content of the pages, but also templates for shops, for blogs, for whatever. And if we needed extra features like creating custom post types or filters, or we used CrocoBlock. They have Jet Engine, Jet Smart Filters, all those kind of add-ons, which work perfectly together with Elementor. So that would be was our basic setup: the Hello theme with Elementor, and if we needed it, also with CrocoBlock. And we worked with that combination for I think 4 or 5 years, and I think we built 200, 150, 200 websites with it.
Wow.
So yeah, we were really experienced with it, and still we switched cold turkey to the full site editor.
I was just about to say that sounds like a reasonable setup, and you guys seem to work really well with that. So you just said it. You switched from from Elementor to full site editing cold turkey, I think in April.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
A big question.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. I understand, because with Elementor we could really make anything we could think of. And it would be very comfortable to stay with Elementor, to continue working with it. But sometimes we also encounter crazy things that happens, that the design all of a sudden looks completely different. And that made us a bit nervous. And I was at WordCamp Europe in June, was it? Yeah, in June.
Yeah, I think it was
And I
June.
spoke with the people of Elementor. And one of the things that I really wanted to talk with them about was accessibility. And they couldn't convince me that that was their priority. And their message was mainly, okay, if you see something that we need to change, please let us know, and we will make sure that we change it or that we have a look at it. And I thought, okay, but Elementor is huge. It's a paid plugin because we use the pro version. It feels a bit like the world upside down, that we need to tell them what they need to change to be accessible. And that made me even more nervous. And I also noticed that a few people who worked a lot with Elementor switched to other themes. And I thought, okay, things are happening, it made me nervous.
Mm.
And the other thing is, and maybe it's a bit difficult to explain, but it felt like building a website with Elementor wasn't professional enough for the projects that we did, for the larger companies that we work for. Um, and all of a sudden, it didn't make sense anymore to me that we are building with Elementor. Um, and eventually I thought, okay, what are we going to do with this? Is this a feeling that I just need to ignore? And okay, Elementor is perfect. Just go on. It's very
Always
comfortable.
work.
We know how it works. Continue. People, we don't like changing stuff. So, but then I thought, no, this isn't the way to go. Yeah. So we made the switch to the full site editor.
And so your decision was mainly influenced by things that weren't working anymore, or you weren't fully convinced of Elementor anymore. So not so much that you wanted to go to full set editing, and so um, how did you decide to go for full set editing then? Why not like have a look at all the other great page builders out there and go for any of them? Why full set editing?
Yeah, before we worked with Elementor, we worked with the Divi team and the Enfold team, and they both have their own page builder. So we already worked with that, and one thing was sure: we're not going to switch back to Divi or to Element or to Enfold. We also had a look at Oxygen and Breakdance, but I thought, okay, why would we choose another page builder um, when there is something like the full site editor and the whole block editor, which is closer to core and which is expanding and is getting better every day. So for me, it didn't make sense to switch to another page builder. It felt like, okay, um, going from Elementor to another one, potato potato, it doesn't make sense. So it didn't even cross my mind to do that. For me, it was really okay, or we stay with Elementor, or we are going to the full site editor. And for me, the full site editor felt like next level.
Mm. Yeah, I
Uh,
mean, when you can like it or not, it is the direction that WordPress is going, and on all the resources that WordPress puts into it also goes in the blog and site editor. And with that, also a lot of tools are focusing on that too. So yeah, I can totally relate to that. I think one question that pops into my mind is both the blog and the site editor they have been introduced to WordPress at a very early stage, and there has been a lot of criticism. There still is a lot of criticism, but with each and every update, new features and improvements are shipped. So how did you decide that in April, okay, now is a good time to do that? Why not wait a little bit more to see more features added, more flaws to be fixed? Why in April?
yeah, well, we made the choice mainly because of our need to start working with it, without really thinking about whether this was the right time, from a productive perspective. And I knew that a number of larger agencies were already building with it. So I thought, okay, if they can build with it, why can't we? Um, and it's also fun to be ahead of the game and discover for yourself what is really possible and what is not. Um, and if you really want something, there's always a way to make it work for
Yeah,
you.
absolutely.
So I didn't even thought about if this was the right time to switch to full site editing. For me, it was more like, okay, we are just going to do it, and we are going to find a way to make it work. Because the we see a lot of websites where the classic editor plugin is still working, and a lot of websites where people are they don't even work with the block editor. And I understand it, because the first time the block editor was introduced, I also thought, oh my gosh,
What is this?
what are they going to do, um, but that was 6 years ago.
Yeah.
And if we all ignore the block editor and the full site editor, which are great tools. And of course, it can even be greater, but that's something we work on. That's the whole open source thing, making things better every day. And I thought, okay, I could still ignore this, but am I really loving WordPress? Do I really want to work with it? And if so, then I need to embrace this instead of ignoring it. So that was also for me that I thought, okay, we're just going to do this. And if things aren't perfect, then we are going to look how we can help to make it perfect. Yeah.
I think that's a super interesting approach. Also, that you guys didn't really think about, like, is the time right or not that much? Because that's something that I see in a lot of our customers. I think most agencies out there are aware that at some point they kind of have to switch, since, like we just said, like, all the efforts of WordPress, they are all going in the direction of block and site editor. But it's really like the timing. Many say, okay, let's wait a little more. There's still so much that doesn't work properly, or there are features missing and all that. So for many people we talk about, it's really not the why or the if. It's really the timing, and the how are we going to do this. So we will talk about this later as well. But I can totally relate to your decision. I mean, we've kind of been in the same position earlier, but just from like a product owner's perspective more than from a user's perspective. Um, I mean, even in order for being asked to be like a technical leader and being one of the first to offer a fully block-based solution, we kind of even had to make this decision to put everything on one card and to go with the block editor way earlier, at the time where almost none of the professionals were working with the block editor yet. And we had to take into account that if we wanted to be like first movers, like you said, we also had to take into account that many of our customers or potential customers might not be ready for that switch yet. So yeah, super interesting. I think with this timing, it's also like in the stock market, you always try to get this perfect point right on the top or very low of the curve to sell or buy. But you can never know for sure if right now is the best time. The only situation in which you know for sure is afterwards, when you realize that maybe you've waited too long, or should have waited a little bit longer or whatever. So super interesting. Before we talk more about how you did the switch, I'd like to ask some more question on the decision making. I mean, you said your team was like six
Yeah.
people, so not that big. Was everyone in your team involved in that decision, or was it kind of like a management level decision? Have your customers been involved in any form?
No, basically it was me. It's all my fault.
You're the one to
We were in
blame.
we were in the race for a new project, and I knew that we were the last to remain, together with another company, and I also knew that the other company worked with the full site editor, and we still
Okay.
worked with Elementor. And in the end, the client chose us, so we were allowed to create their new website. But for me, it didn't feel right to sell them an Elementor website. And it really made me think, okay, they could choose a full site editing website and Elementor, and they've chosen us. Is this really the best decision for them? Or is this only the best decision for me because, hey, we have a new project? And sometimes you need to be honest with yourself. And in this case, I thought, no, this is not the best thing for them. They are a growing company, they are very ambitious, and Elementor is not the best thing for them. So I overnight made the decision, okay, guys, we sold them an Elementor website, but we are going to give them a full site editing website. Hey, we have 6 weeks. Let's go.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, that was pretty heavy. But I thought, okay, we need to start doing this. We can talk about it for hours and hours, days, weeks, as you just mentioned. But it's never a good time to make a decision like this or to make a switch like this. So what we did, we asked Remkes de Vries. He is like a WordPress veteran here
Yeah.
in the Netherlands. We asked him to help us and to give us a workshop about full site editing, about all the things we need to know, and help us create a new tool set. So we did that, and after that, yeah, we thought, okay, we can do this. It's not that difficult. And the fun thing is that if you're used to Elementor and you are used to working with containers and sections and templates, and you're going to full site editing, it's basically the same.
Not that different, yeah.
No, it's also working with templates, and you can create the header and the footer inside WordPress self. And in Elementor, you're doing the same thing. So as soon as we understood how things were connected with each other, we saw that it was basically the same setup, um, and that also helped to get the people here more enthusiastic about it. Yeah, and in the end, of course, I had the decision vote, but the rest was also more enthusiastic about that work after that workshop.
I can imagine, yeah.
Yeah, and of course, if you know a page builder like Elementor inside and out, and you suddenly need to build in a totally different way, it is a huge transition. So I totally understand that they were not very happy with me in the beginning. But in the end, they understood why I made the decision, and we are now busy with building, experimenting, discovering, and that will never stop. And that was also with Elementor, because when we started with it 4 or 5 years ago, Elementor wasn't the Elementor that it is now. So in those 4 or 5 years, we also learned a lot of new
Yeah.
things, and we discovered new tools that we could use, and it will be the same with the full site editor. So yeah, in the end, it was my decision. We did involve the team by doing that workshop with Remkes, and by showing them how full site editing works, and that it's not that big of a thing, because yeah, the setup is basically the same with Elementor, and that helped to get some rest and to not be that nervous to do
Uh,
this. So yeah, for me that was a really a nice way to handle it.
I mean, that was basically the entire idea of this part of this Gutenberg project, to have like this page building experience directly in WordPress core. For us, it was similar. I mean, we had to make this one big decision to go from a page builder. We used Visual Composer before, to the block editor. Yes, that was a big decision. But the migration later to full site editing, that wasn't difficult at all for us, since we also kind of always had the entire functionality of full site editing with all the global styles and the templates and header footer building and all that. We always had that, but just on a custom level, and all we had to do was like migrate that into the core functionality. But I can understand it. It really is. It is a page building experience. I mean, that was the whole goal. How did it went with the customer? How did you sell them? How did you tell them that they wouldn't be getting what they actually bought?
Well, I basically told them, okay, guys, um, you don't know the difference between Elementor and full site editing, because they worked with a custom CMS, so they didn't have any experience with WordPress whatsoever. So for them, it really didn't matter whether it would be Elementor or the full site editor, because everything would be new for them. So I told them, okay, I sold you an Elementor website, but I don't think it's the best approach for you. So we are going to create the website with the full site editor. It will cost us more time, but that's our problem, not yours. And I thought, okay. So for them, it
But
really wasn't a big thing. Um, and of course, some features that we have built in Elementor, it took us way more time now to create it, especially
and to
because
figure out how.
this, yeah, this specific projects had a lot of animations, like
Mm,
moving things, and in Elementor there were basic setups for that, but in the block editor not.
not yet.
So we needed more customization from our side. But in general, I noticed that customers ask for WordPress or for WooCommerce, but they don't ask for a specific page builder. Sometimes they already have an Elementor website and they want to have a new one in Elementor because they
Mm.
know how it works, or they really want to use Elementor because they wrote a lot of good stuff about it. But that's one in 20, 30, 40 websites, for the
Mm.
product projects. So for customers, yeah, they haven't been really involved and they don't notice a lot about it.
Yeah, I mean the only point where they really have something to do with what kind of tool the website was built is when they do like the content management or something like that later. But other than that, it's like I say, for them it doesn't really make a difference with which tools you work. But I really like the perspective that you're bringing it here to ask what is best for the customer, because it might not be important to them which tools you use, but I think it does make a difference, because a customer, they don't buy a website every 3 to 5 years. They don't buy it every few months. They do that maybe all 3 to 5 years, if even. And while you can definitely argument that full site editing has some flaws today, how sure can you be that this will still be the case in like 1 year, 2 year, or 3 years? And what will the customer say when they someday they realize that the website they had just bought from you was built based on an outdated technology that is now causing more and more like compatibility issues, for example, with new tools they want to add to their site. So I really like that perspective.
Yeah, and also from the accessibility perspective, if we trust on Elementor, we also need to trust on them to make sure that it's accessible. And if you don't have and of course, uh, if you want to create an accessible website, you also need to have your own knowledge about it. It's not that, okay, I install Elementor and whoa, my whole website is accessible. But Elementor should be by default be accessible with all the tools that they have and that you're using. And for me, there was really something thinking about the future. Okay, if we now stay with Elementor and the new European Accessibility Act is coming in June this year, are we still able to create websites that are totally accessible? So yeah, that was of course I can think about, okay, I just pretend like I don't know about this, but I don't think it's honest to clients to sell them a website and in about 4, 5, 6 months it's not accessible
Mm.
while it should be. So yeah, that's also something that we need to think about. It's not, of course, you want to work in a way that's comfortable for you and that works for you, but you also need to think about your client and what they need. And yeah, if maybe Elementor isn't the best a
Mm.
way for them.
I think that is a general issue that many page builder or in general tools that have been for quite some while are facing. I mean, for them, they have much more legacy to work with, and it might be much more difficult for them to add like basic accessibility features, while the blog editor and the site editor and in general newer tools, for them it's much easier to get all these new requirements met
Yeah.
than for those page builders. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that we have covered the decision making now. You already hinted a little bit on how you actually approached that switch. I think that's actually the thing that's most interesting for all the agencies and freelancers listening today. How to make such a big change, such a big switch, while still meeting all the deadlines and have your regular agency business running? You mentioned that one project that was like kind of the first one. I also know that many of our customers, they use like their own website as kind of
Yeah.
a testing or learning project, and they rebuild their site with full site editing, and as soon as they feel safe with that, then they move on to customer projects. You started with a customer project right away. um, did you still, was it just that one project, or did you like do everything from then on just with full site editing?
No, we started with that one project and with our own website, because we did rebranding for ourselves and we needed a new website. So we did it parallel, but the client project was the first one that we started with. And we finished all projects that we were building with Elementor, and we started with this specific project in full site editing, and all the other new projects that we started, we also picked full site editing. And our own website was a really nice playground to just see how everything works. Yeah, so we did it this way. Cold turkey, yeah. And of course, you can start with your own website, but if you're starting with your own website, there is no a drive to finish it, because whether you finish it in 2 weeks or 2 months or 6 months, no one is complaining. And when you start with a client project, we had 6 weeks. 6 weeks is insanely fast for each website, and if you have to do it with a whole new tool, it's really crazy fast. But this gave us the drive to work with it every day and to be focused. And um, for me, it couldn't be better. This was
Mm.
really the right way for us to do it, because otherwise you're postponing things and you think, okay, yeah, oh yeah, full site editing, yeah, we will do it with the next project, and the next
Yeah,
project you're just starting with Elementor again, and you think, oh yeah, we should do this with the full site editing. Oh well, yeah, we already started with Elementor, so okay, the next
the
one, and
next one, yeah.
before you know, you're a year
Yeah.
later, and nothing happened. So um, sometimes you just need to go.
Yeah, not having a deadline is a good thing, but it also is also not a good thing.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
how many night shifts did you have to do to meet this 6 weeks deadline?
Well, no night shifts, but it did. It well, um, at the end, it took us 100 hours more than we had. So yeah, that was a lot of extra hours. But we did manage to build it in 6 weeks, and just to jump in the deep, we learned so many things, and it really helped tremendously to do it this way. And of course, we're not done learning, because as I just mentioned, the full site editor, it continues to develop. So we continue to discover things. So even though we now completely switched, no, that's not true. We are creating one website now with Elementor, but that's because the client really wants to use
Okay, yeah.
Elementor. I try to convince him to do it with full site editor, but no, he wasn't convinced. So that's the one that we are creating with Elementor. But all the other projects we're doing now with the full site editor. Um, yeah, so we switched completely now. Yeah.
And I mean, you mentioned this workshop with Remkos. I know Remkos; he's a really great guy. So you picked the right one to do that. So, what did you do afterwards? Was it like learning by doing and just finding everything out on your own, or did you have like any other forms of like training? Did you all do it together, or was everyone doing it like for themselves and then you put all the resources together?
No,
Or how?
we basically divided the team in two parts. So half of us kept doing the Elementor websites and the support for it, and the other half, including me, we went into full site editing. So I definitely didn't do this all alone. And because we were with the three of us working on that one specific project, we very quickly came across each other mistakes or things that didn't work so well, and then together we looked for other options to do it until it really was perfect. And because we could focus on this project, we learned very quickly. So in those 6 weeks, we were with the three of us completely focused on full site editing, and the other three were working with Elementor. And after that, we kind of involved them and showed them around in the full site editor and explained how we did certain things. Remkes was also our, I'm not sure how to say it in English. In Dutch, we would say our vraagbaak. So the person who we could send all our questions to, like, okay, we want to do this, and we tried this, and that, but nothing works, and help. And then he will send me an email with, okay, you could have a look into this plugin, or check this video, or so he showed us around. We didn't watch a lot of videos or wrote a lot of articles because it's so time consuming, and it's something that, okay, you can read articles and show videos for 1, 2, 3 weeks without even starting. So I thought, okay, no, we're just going to start, and if something isn't working, or if there's something that we really can't figure out, then we will start looking for articles and videos, or we ask Remkes. And that really, that worked really well for us.
I mean, this is a pretty cool thing, and I think also a pretty unique thing of the WordPress community, that there are so many people out there, people you might not even know personally, but who are eager to help. That you can, there's so many places where you can raise questions and ask for help. I didn't know that in any other industry that I've worked before, and that was one of the things that surprised me so much when I started working in the WordPress community. Like, people were always eager to help and offering support without wanting anything back. And at the beginning, I didn't know how to handle that because I wasn't used to it. I was also, okay, where's the loophole here? What do they want? And I think, but that's just how the WordPress community is working, and I think it's a really great thing.
Yeah, everyone wants to help, and that's also something that I mentioned at my talk at WordCamp Netherlands last November. Just start, and if you have questions, there are so many people who are willing to help you, and also in the WordPress Slack channels, and that's really something amazing from our community.
Absolutely. You mentioned some things that were issues like animations. We will be talking about your tech stack entirely, how it looks like now. But besides from that, have there been any major setbacks or bigger issues you ran into, especially during those first 6 weeks where you definitely had to meet this deadline?
Um, Not really with the website. We did encounter a few issues, but we would have them with Elementor too, because
Mm.
we needed to create animations which were just not default. We didn't have really issues with that project. We did have a few with another project that we did after it, but that was a web shop, and web shops are always more complex. So we had issues with the filters. We had issues with the templates. We had issues with the queries. We had a lot of issues. So yeah, that was a bit hard because you think, oh, it's working, yay, and then you change something at a certain place, and then you're testing it again, and then, oh, okay.
Maybe not.
So we thought that we had everything completely ready, and then one thing didn't work, and then we had to change everything 180 degrees. So yeah, there were some curse words involved in that project. So creating a web shop is like, it's more difficult, but now that we know everything, it's also very possible to do it. But we did wrote a few things down, like, okay, if you want to create like an attribute template, you have to be aware of this, and that. Okay, if you want to use filters, use this with that, and so we made a kind of um, process about which blocks you can use, which add-ons and plugins you can use. So yeah, that was kind of a setback, because in the first web shop that we released with the full site editing, I think it took us 40 extra hours to make everything works as it should be.
Mm.
Well, we thought
Okay.
that we were done, so yeah.
Yeah,
Like
but
a
yeah,
bit of
like you said,
progress.
these things they just happen in website projects.
Yeah,
I mean, with new technology, definitely more than with the ones that you're used to, but still, you never know what
no,
happens.
that's true.
So, in hindsight, from what you've told me, I take it that you would do it like exactly the same way again, just dive into it. Don't ask too many questions, just try it out and get
Yeah.
into. So that's the advice that you would give to other agencies who are trying to work out how to switch to full site editing.
Yeah, I would definitely do it the same way. The only thing I would change is sometimes we were too quick with the design. So to
Mhm.
see, okay, can we create the design like it should be done? And we ignored the functionality. So then the design was ready, and then we figured out, oh, but we can't make it work how it should be, so we need to use another block.
Mm.
And that's a waste of work, and a waste of time. So my advice would be to first make a kind of framework with all the blocks that you need for the functionality, and also tested it in the different templates, because in the last web shop that we released, we needed template for the categories but also for the attributes, and some things work in the one but they don't work in the other. So create all the templates that you need, add all the functionality that you need, and when that works, then you can
Really insane.
then you can go to the design. But I'm not sure if all those agencies have it, but for us, you want to create something nice and you want to add the design. And so most of the times you start with the design, but it's better to start with the functionality. I think it's
Mhm.
always better to start with the functionality, but specifically when you switch to a new way of working, it's really important to just make sure that everything works, and then you can add those nice layers of design.
Yeah. So you would say that switching to full site editing for you, it wasn't like entirely just a switch of tools, but there are also some processes that you changed and some things in in a website project, how and when you did which parts.
Yeah, yeah, that's also something that we changed, because when we were building with Elementor, we didn't make a design in advance, so we basically designed directly in Elementor, and that worked fast for us. But it also have a kind of limiting function, because you only build what you know.
Mm.
And as a result, we didn't really challenge ourselves much. So when we started with full site editing, we didn't know how it works. So it's a bit difficult to design something with blocks that you have never used before. So we thought, okay, we're also going to change our process. So now we first design 3 pages in Figma, and when those pages are approved, then we are going to build it in WordPress itself. And we are now even considering to designing all pages in Figma first. So now it can happen that something has to be made that we have no idea how to. But if it can be done with the standard options of a block, our developers jump in to make something custom. So yeah, we did change our process also.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, we all already talked about your tech stack pre-switch. What tools are you working with now? Is it just plain full site editing and some custom features, or do you work with any extensions, any other tools additionally?
Yeah, we do use Cadence Blocks Pro
Mhm.
as an addition, and we use the Ollie theme. We use the Pro theme. To be honest, I don't think that we need the Pro theme, because the free theme is also very, very good. But we really like Ollie, and we just bought the Pro theme to
To
support
support,
them.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and we just talked about the community that we have, and what's really cool with Ollie is that they have a dedicated Slack channel, workspace. Oh, all those lecture terms, I don't know. But they have a dedicated workspace, I think I should call it, where you can highlight the things that you made with Ollie, but where you can also raise questions. And the creators of the team are very active in the channel. So it feels really like that you can help them to create something that's even more cooler than it already is. So the Ollie theme is great for us. And then there's Cadence Blocks Pro as an addition to the block editor, mainly because their blocks have more options for the responsive settings. That's something that isn't very in the full site editing, or in the block editor, I should say. There aren't a lot of responsive settings, and we are currently testing. I have no idea how to pronounce it. I think Blockera, Blockera. Um, and what they do, they add responsive controls and advanced design options to the default blocks. So I really like that approach because with Cadence Blocks Pro, they have their own blocks.
Custom
So
block.
you use more of their blocks and less of the default blocks. And with Blockera, you use the default blocks, but then on steroids because you have those extra options. So yeah, that's an approach that I really like. So we are testing it currently. So no, we are not building a whole project with it right away. We don't do this one cold turkey, but we are testing with it, and it really, really looks amazing. So
Yeah.
there's a possibility that we will switch to Blockera.
Okay, sounds super interesting. I mean, I haven't worked with Blockera personally, but I can totally relate to what you just said about custom blocks versus integrating into the core blocks, because this is also something that we do. We always try to stay as close to core as possible and to work as much as possible with the core functionality, and like to add features to the core blocks rather than having like custom blocks, because this also it just gives you more flexibility in terms of combining it with other tools. For example, you mentioned Ollie. They are also a really great tool. We're actually having Mike and one of the founders in one of our next conversations episodes.
Oh, cool.
And they as well, they also work really close to core, and they also try to be compatible with as much as possible. And I think this is one of the big advantages of the block and the site editor, that the more solutions stick as close to core as possible and just integrate in that, the better the entire environment works together, and the better you can create your own personal WordPress ecosystem with tools that just work together. I mean, you don't need that many tools anymore. I mean, this is one advantage of the block and site editor, that a lot of functionality that usually would have required you to have a page builder, for example, or any add-ons, is now inbuilt. But if you do need other tools, then the block and site editor are a good way to make sure that they work together in a good way and they function well together.
Yeah, yeah, I remember that Thomas told me about Greyd, that, as you mentioned, that you add functionality to the default blocks, and that if one of those options is integrated in core, that you just remove it out of Greyd. And I think that's a really nice approach to kind of be ahead of, okay, our customers already need it, but it isn't in the block editor yet, so let's add it. And at the moment that it is in core, just remove it from your end of the game.
Yeah.
And that, I think that's a really good and nice approach to it.
Yeah, absolutely. We do it exactly like you just described. I think a good example, I think we also talked about it, was fluid typography. That was something we added to the Greyd global styles because it just wasn't there. And I'm not 100% sure if it already is in core, or if it's still one of those experimental features in the Gutenberg plugin, but it will soon be a core feature. And whenever this happens, we either deprecate our feature or we migrate whatever we offer on top into core functionality and just stay as compatible as possible to any other tools out there. Okay. So a couple of more questions before we wrap up for today. I mean, even though you're obviously convinced of full site editing, I mean, I don't have to ask you about that, but I assume there are still some things you'd like to see improved or changed. What are they?
Absolutely. Yeah, one of the things that I really, yeah, it's just something for me. It works so on Logic is the whole way to add a menu. I really appreciate the classic menu editor that we have because now um, you have a header which you can create, and in the header you can add a navigation menu. Okay, that makes sense. But in that menu itself, you are not able to create like a whole new menu. Then you need to go to the site editor to the navigation, and okay, you already lost me. So that's something it could work way easier. So I really hope that's something that they are going to change. Um, if you want to add like a mega menu, you need to use a plugin because it's not possible by default. And if you use that plugin, it brings back the classic menu. So yeah, we are creating a lot of mega menus because we are really happy with it and also with the classic menu. So that's something I really hope that they are going to improve it. Um, I also noticed that if you're now going to add extra CSS in the site editor, there is no syntax, so you don't see if you made any mistakes or whatsoever. So we found a snippet to activate the syntax, and at the end we copy all the extra CSS just to the theme, But it's something I think it's something that you could add very simple, and that would help a lot. So yeah, that's something that isn't working very well, and something that's a bit confusing for customers. So we just talked about Ollie. If you add Ollie, Ollie also has its own patterns, and in the general settings, you can add your brand colors and you can add your brand fonts. And the cool thing is that all those patterns changed right away. So
Automatically, yeah.
they adapt all those fonts and all those colors. But for a client, it could look like all those patterns from Ollie are made for them because, hey, it has my colors and it has my fonts. But that's not true. It's just a default, a standard pattern. So, how are you going to tell your clients which patterns you made and which patterns are default? There's no way to do it. And you also can't hide those patterns. So we find a way, well, find a way. What we are doing now is that we are creating categories in the patterns, and we are just saying, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so that those categories are on top of the
Yeah.
pattern list. And then we are
Bottom of the
telling our
list.
customers, okay, only use patterns from those categories that are listed with 1 to 5. The other categories, don't look at. But it feels a bit, yeah. So that's something that should improve, I think, for agencies. And for everyone who is creating websites for customers, that's something that we should do better.
It's super interesting that you mentioned this because we are working on like a very very similar issue on our side at the moment. We have like some big UI and UX changes on our roadmap at the moment because we have the same issue. We integrate ourselves into core, and at the beginning we wanted the customer to see only one experience and don't necessarily point out areas. So, oh, this is a great feature, this is a great feature. So we blended in the core functionality. But the result now is that people just don't know if this is a core feature, is this a great feature, and if I run into an issue, do I report it to Greyd? Do I report it here and there? We had a very interesting live product walkthrough just a couple of days ago by someone and experiencing exactly that. So, okay, is this now a core feature? I don't know. So that's definitely an issue. And I also think what we found, I mean, you guys obviously did a pretty well job in just diving into and just finding your way around on your own. But this is actually something that we are facing, that some people we know or some of our customers are struggling with when they just start with the block and site editor, when they have no experience yet. Then it's a little bit difficult to find out where to do what and where to find what. And also there are like 100 different ways to doing one and the same thing, which gives you a lot of flexibility, but it also makes it really difficult to find your way around if you're new, and probably also if you're not an expert. I mean, one other issue we are trying to tackle at the moment is that there are very different user groups in a plugin site editor, and the editors, they offer you a lot of possibilities as a designer, which might also be overwhelming for other target groups. For example, if you hand this website then over to a customer and they have no WordPress experience at all, they just want to manage content, for example, then this is something that at the moment you have to make sure that you either educate your customer really well, or you also use features that enable you to offer your customer experience where they don't need to worry about breaking anything, for example.
Yeah, but that's the cool thing with the default blocks. They have the override functionality. So what we now do is that we create a pattern, and with the override functionality, we can kind of lock it, so customers can change the images, they can change the content, but they don't see the styling settings, and that's really helpful because they can add patterns wherever they like. They can switch patterns, they can add and change the content, but they are not overwhelmed by all those extra options.
Yeah, that's exactly, that's one of the ways you can do. But yeah, that's one thing that we think could be improved in form of have like more guidance for the different user groups. So that's something that we plan to work on. Yeah. Okay, I think we could go on for hours talking talking about this topic, but this might actually be a good point to wrap it up for today. So on behalf of our listeners, thank you so much for sharing all those insights and your experiences and your thoughts. I'm pretty sure that a lot of agencies and freelancers out there can totally identify with the situation that you've been in last year, and they will definitely benefit a lot from everything that you've shared today. And maybe this conversation is inspiring them to find the courage to follow your example. So thank you very, very much. Is there anything that we haven't covered today that you'd like to add?
No. I think we covered everything. Thank you for your invitation. I think you did a pretty amazing job hosting this episode. And I really hope that we inspire agencies and freelancers to just start using the full site editing, because you can complain a lot about, oh, WordPress isn't changing or whatever, but it is changing a lot. But if you don't use those tools, and if you stick with everything then you don't have anything to complain about, but you're also not helping the project to grow and to go further. So I think that everyone who is, as me, kind of a bit in love with WordPress, you just need to go for it, and you just need to go working with the full site editing, embrace it, try to find out how you can help with it. And I think if we look back in about 3-4 years, I'm really curious how the WordPress world will look like at that moment. But I really hope that a lot of agencies and freelancers embrace the full site editor then.
Absolutely. I won't add anything to that because that have just been like perfect closing remarks. So thank you very much. For those of you who are listening today, if you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel yet, now would be like the perfect time to do that. Also, to make sure you don't miss out on our next episode, which will also be a very interesting one. We will have our CEO, Mark Weisbrot, for the first time in the show, and we're super excited to have Vito Pelek from Atarim and Aurelio from WP Umbrella joining him on a super interesting discussion on how technology can be the driver to boost productivity in your agency. So see you in the next episode. And again, Rosanne, thank you very, very much for being my guest today.
You're welcome.